It wasn't my phone that woke me up, but my wife. She's always been a lighter sleeper than me, and even though I had it on silent, the constant stream of notification vibrations was making the phone shuck and jive all over my nightstand. Honey, honey, honey! I came awake to a rough shake accompanying the words. Yeah, what? I managed, blearily. Your phone. Somebody is blowing you up. Must be my other girlfriend. An old joke, wildly inappropriate considering what was to follow. She mumbled, already well on her way back to sleep. I checked the bedside clock. The red LED showed 3 a.m. on the nose. Weird. I leaned awkwardly, half awake, grabbed my phone, and had to do a double take when I saw the notifications. 186 texts, 93 missed calls, and 1 emergency notification. What? The actual. Fuck! I thought, okay, this is a dream, must be a dream. I don't even know 186 people. Okay. Must be a natural disaster on the way. Or did Kim Jong-un launch nukes at the West Coast? Shit. With slightly shaking hands, I thumbed the official notification, expecting the worst. I held my breath. Do not look at the moon. Wait, what? The feeling of surreal vertigo intensified. The logical part of my brain was continuing to insist that this must be a dream. Must be a dream, must be. Shut up, I whispered to myself, climbing out of bed. I was awake now, fully, rigidly awake. And so I decided to take my phone to the living room to investigate further. Plopping down on the couch, I started scrolling through texts. Curiouser and curiouser, I mumbled to myself, looking at the texts. None of them were from numbers I recognized. Some of them, not even from phone numbers. Entries from numbers with only 8 digits, or 6, or 2. Entries with letters and numbers mixed together. Entries with letters and numbers and Chinese characters mixed in. Emojis and symbols mixed in. My disquiet was growing steadily. I clicked the first message. Wow, look at the moon. It's so big and beautiful. Amazing, isn't it? So, okay, my brain responded. Not a dream. A practical joke. Someone is messing with me, with my phone. I wonder if my wife is in on this. I clicked the next text. It's such a beautiful night tonight. Just look. The moon looks amazing. It's so big. Look at the moon. Wow, it looks so cool. Look, honey. Something about the honey sent a chill up my spine. My wife, shaking me awake, popped back into my mind, unbidden. Look at that moon out over the water, honey. It looks so huge and so close to the horizon. Why does it do that? It's such a beautiful night, honey. Look. Wow, the moon looks awesome. And as I was reading these, I realized I could hear a voice speaking the words. Quietly, like they were coming from very far away, repeating, looping over each other, blurring, speeding up, slowing down, warping. Look at the moon. Go outside. Look at the moon. Go outside. Look at the moon. It's a beautiful night. Go look at the moon. Mustering all the calm I could, I set my phone, face down, on the couch. Some still logical functionality commanded me to turn on the TV. Turn on the news. Yes. Normalcy. Emergency broadcast system. Yes. That's a good idea. I turned it on. It's 3 a.m. Surely more than a minute has passed, but it says 3 a.m. right there in the corner of the screen. 3 Moz a.m. PDT. And even though it's the middle of the night, there's Anderson Cooper, and he's staring at me. I swear he's looking right at me, and suddenly turning on the news seems like it was a really bad idea.
West Coast residents are being warned tonight not to look at the moon. Authorities are warning that looking at the moon might destroy your life and could unravel the very fabric of reality. Ben, do not look at the moon.
I pressed the power button again on the remote and the TV shut off. Heart trying to thud its way out of my chest. I stood and walked back towards my bedroom. Somehow, I knew before I opened the door that my wife would be awake, and she was. She was sitting up, her face lit by her phone screen. I shouldn't have told you to look at the moon, honey. I'm sorry. Wait, what? Are you in on this too? What is going on? She looked down and started crying. I'm sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. rushed over and sat down hard on the bed, right in front of her. "Sorry for what?" I demanded, panic seizing control of me as I grabbed her shoulders. "Sorry for what? What the fuck is going on? Sorry for what?" She stopped crying and smiled. Her eyes were far away, glazed, almost robotic. "Oh, wow," she said. "Wow, honey. It's such a beautiful night tonight. Just look at the moon." I let go of her shoulders and stood up. I walked calmly, out of the room, out through the living room to the hall to the back door. I threw it open, feeling like my arms and legs were moving on their own, like I was merely a passenger. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I stepped out into my backyard. I tilted my head to the sky, and I looked at the moon. And then I remembered. God help me. I remembered. Driving along, southbound on the coast highway, coming home from a long night. She was tired, dried sweat had warped her perfect hairdo, but she still looked radiant, face lit by the dash lights, and of course, by the moon. She had sung her heart out tonight, and the crowd had eaten it up. She was a bright, shining star tonight, hanging out there seeming mere inches from the horizon, the big, swollen, full face of the moon, just about to set. "Oh, wow," she said. "Wow, honey, it's such a beautiful night tonight. Just look at the moon." And I did. I took my eyes off the road, and I did. She was right, of course. It was beautiful. I sighed. And then I heard an awful sound, like a loud pop, and we were upside down, flying, weightless, like somehow we had been pulled by the moon into space. The car was full of weird things floating through the air, coins, a pen cap, and her mic had even floated in from the back into the front. I had one last look at her face. It was still transitioning from the marvel at the beauty of the moon to the shock of the crash. I tried to reach out my hand, but I seemed to be moving through jello. The moon filled the windshield, seemed to get even bigger, brighter, turned the sky white, turned the whole world white. I wept a little then. Not as much as I would later, but a little. "You know the rest," I said when I had regained my composure. "I came out of the coma. I woke up here." The officer stared at me, and I could tell she was struggling to keep her face impassive. She felt bad for me, but she didn't want to. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, looking down at her notepad. She hadn't taken down a single word of it. "Can you tell me how much you'd had to drink that night?" I sighed again. Could I? No, not really. Quite a few. Too fucking many. "No," I answered. "No, I don't think I can." She nodded. "You're going to need a lawyer. When you're ready to get out of here, I mean." I looked down at my broken body, just a mess of wires and tubes and casts. "Yeah," was all I could muster. She stood and walked toward the door of my hospital room. She put her hand on the door, and without turning, she asked, "Do you think if you'd obeyed the warning, you'd still be in the coma?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Yes, I do." My friend has a camera that will show you your last photograph before you die. Everyone dies at some point. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have a last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last photograph. On Friday night, we met up at Casey's house. Even though she has an annoying neighbor, her parents built this amazing fire pit that's the perfect spot for chilly autumn nights. After starting the fire and roasting some marshmallows, she brought out something I hadn't seen in at least a decade. A disposable camera. "This is a special camera," Casey said with a grin. "Apparently, when you take a picture, it'll be your last photo before you die." I sat there, trying to digest what she was saying. "You mean, the camera kills you?" "Yeah, like that one Goosebumps book," Brady replied. "Say cheese and die." "Oh my gosh, I loved that one," Maribel said, grinning. No, that's not what I mean." Casey held her hands up, clearly annoyed that we didn't get it. "Everyone has a last photo before they die, like, for example, my grandpa, 3 days before he passed away. He went on a fishing trip. The last photo on that trip is the last photo that was ever taken of him." "Well, it's impossible for a camera to show that," I replied. "It would have to be a time-traveling camera for that to work. You guys are no fun." Casey rolled her eyes and started putting the camera back in her bag. Wait. We didn't say we didn't want to use it," Maribel said. "Yeah, it could be fun. A wicked smile flashed on Casey's lips. Okay, good. Who wants to be the first? Brady raised his hand. I'll go. That was Brady for you. Never missed a chance to impress the girls. He stood up, his face lit by the roaring fire. Where should I stand? The lighting's kinda harsh, maybe by that tree. Brady walked several feet away from the fire and stood next to the tree. Then he leaned against it, crossed his arms, and raised an eyebrow. Casey raised the camera to her face. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. White light flashed across the dark backyard. Brady stepped away from the tree, grinning. Okay, who's next? Casey asked. I'll go, Maribel said. She pushed her glasses up her nose and stood next to the tree, somewhat awkwardly. Casey lifted the camera to her face again and took a photo. The ratcheting sound of her rewinding the film filled the air. Okay, Benny, your turn, she said, shooting me a smile. I walked over to the tree, took off my baseball cap, and waited. Casey lifted the camera to her face, then frowned. Can't you smile? Nope. Ugh, fine. She rewound the film and handed the camera to me. Then she posed next to the tree in a classic sorority squat pose. Yeah, this wasn't awkward at all. Casey and I had just started dating, but the longer things went on, the more doubts I was having. Sure, we looked good in pictures, a classic football star cheerleader match. In reality, we weren't either of those things. She was pretty, but extremely insecure, jealous, and high maintenance. I was a neurodivergent math nerd who just happened to luck out genetically and look like a jock. I stared at her through the viewfinder, her form slightly distorted. Hey, you didn't count down, she whined. What? You were posing. I want to know exactly when the photo is being taken. That's all. Okay, sure. I rewound the camera and handed it back to her. She sidled up next to me and lowered her voice. Hey, when Brady and Maribel leave, you want to stay a little bit after? Oh, I don't know. My dad's renovating the kitchen and he wants me to help him in the morning. It doesn't have to be long, just for a little while. I should have said no, but she was pushing, and I felt bad saying no. Okay, just for a half hour. Sounds good to me. We can watch something down in the basement. My parents can't hear a thing down there. What about your neighbor? He seemed really mad when we were watching V for Vendetta. Said the explosions woke him up. Remember, he was pounding on the glass door and yelling at us? She rolled her eyes. So we'll keep the volume down. Come on, it's just a half hour. We don't even have to watch anything. Okay. Before I could say more, she grabbed the camera and started towards the fire pit. I followed. When are you gonna get those developed? Brady asked. We could go tonight. There's still a 1-hour photo in the CVS on Route 14, Maribel replied. And we could pick up some snacks. Wait, seriously? They still develop photos? Casey asked. My dad uses them for passport photos and other official stuff. So it was decided. The four of us piled into Brady's car and took off into the night. We spent the entire hour hanging out at the store, picking out snacks. Then Casey went up to the counter, grabbed the paper envelope, and led us back out to the car. We piled inside, and Brady turned on the lights. She flicked open the envelope and pulled out the photos. No fucking way. The first photo showed an older man standing on a beach. Gray hair dripping wet, blue waves rolling behind him. But with his square jaw and tall build, he looked just like an aged-up Brady. That's impossible, I said. Not necessarily, Maribel replied after a pause. The camera looked like a disposable camera, but it's possible someone put a cheap microchip in there, like a mini Raspberry Pi or something. Then it took our photos, and with the help of AI, aged them up. Yeah, but how would the CVS develop them? I asked. Maybe it was straightforward. Maybe when he opened the camera to get the film, there was a USB stick there instead, loaded up with the images. So he just stuck it in the computer and printed them out. It's weird, but Amazon is full of weird shit like this. I once saw a karaoke machine that used AI to auto-tune everyone as they were singing, in real time. We could go back inside and ask them, I suggested. I want to see the rest of the photos first, Casey said, nearly cutting me off. Where'd you get this camera again? Maribel asked. A friend gave it to me. And with that vague response, she flipped to the next photo. It was a family Christmas photo. Several people standing in front of the tree, happy faces lit by multicolored lights. But my heart dropped when I saw the woman on the left. A woman, maybe 30, holding a little baby, with the same heart-shaped face, the same curly dark hair as Maribel. "Oh no," she said, her eyes wide. We all stared at the photo, silently, unsure what to say. But then, I saw it. In the middle of the photo, sitting on the couch, was an old woman. A very old woman, with skin so wrinkled it looked like crepe paper, and hair so white it looked like a tuft of cotton candy on her head. Wire-framed glasses were perched on her nose. "I think that's you." Maribel snatched the photo out of Casey's hands. "Whoa," she whispered, studying it up close. For all her big talk about this being some AI thing, she seemed to take it pretty seriously. As I watched Maribel, I couldn't help but smile. For a second, I felt something. A sense of awe as I looked at her face, lighting up with the joy of her family. I'd never looked at Maribel as anything other than a friend, but there was something tugging at my heartstrings now. Not even something I could put into words as a crush, or attraction, or lust. Just something. A flicker of connection, of emotion, of... Benny? I glanced at Casey, and then I looked down. In her hands was the photo she'd taken of me. The exact same photo. Of me, tonight, holding my baseball cap, standing next to the tree, not smiling, staring straight ahead, eyes red from the flash. My first thought was the camera had malfunctioned. Whatever this was, AI or otherwise, had messed up and glitched on my picture. And it just spit out the photo as it was taken tonight. But as Casey, Brady, and Maribel stared at me with horror, I realized. So it's saying, the picture you took of me tonight is the last picture of me alive. "I guess so," Casey said. The silence pressed in. I shook my head and forced a laugh. "Come on. This is just some stupid prank camera. Like Maribel said, it's some AI thing. Maybe it even purposely skipped some people to scare them." None of them were laughing. "Okay, come on, let's look at Casey's." I plucked my photo from the stack and froze. Casey was sitting on the floor of someone's basement. Her hands were tied to a metal support pole with thick rope. A strip of duct tape had been placed over her mouth. The left side of her head was matted with blood, and a thin trail dripped down the side of her face. Her blue eyes were wide with fear and looking straight at whoever was taking the photo. "This is some sick fucking prank," Brady muttered, his voice low with anger. Casey just sat there, frozen. "Let's go home," Maribel said. "Forget about all this stuff. It's just a prank, like Brady said." But Casey didn't move. She just sat there, the photo shaking in her hands, her blue eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong?" Maribel asked softly. "The basement," she said, finally pointing at the photo. "I recognize it. My dad and I went over there one time when he needed help with the fuse box, and I thought he was annoying, but I never... Casey, whose basement is it?" I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. "My neighbor's." "Attention shoppers."
Please hide at the back of the store immediately. Attention shoppers,
Came a male voice over the intercom.
please move to the back of the store immediately.
"The back of the store?" I whispered to Daniel. "Don't they mean the front of the store? To pay for our stuff?" It was 8:50 p.m., 10 minutes till closing time. We'd brought our 2 kids out on this late-night Walmart excursion in the hopes of burning off some energy. Instead, they'd just thrown tantrums for new Legos and Hot Wheels. It was a disaster. But apparently, the disaster was just beginning.
Please move to the back of the store immediately.
The voice repeated overhead.
This is not a drill.
I glanced around, but the other shoppers were just as confused as I was. An old lady looked up at the ceiling, scrunching her face. "What the hell?" A dark-haired woman asked her boyfriend, pushing a cart full of garden supplies. "Didn't you hear?" An older man said, leaning over his cart of bottled water and canned food. "We're in a tornado watch. One touchdown in Sourville." A tornado? It was definitely storming outside. I'd seen the black clouds roll in from the east earlier, but it didn't look that bad.
Do not stay out in the open. I repeat, do not stay out in the open.
There was a pause. Then, An explosion of sound as everyone began to mobilize, carts rolling, panicked voices, feet slapping on the floor. No, 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 no. This can't be happening. I hurried down the toy aisle, Tucker in my arms, Daniel and Jackson following me. 3 zigzaggy turns, and then we were in the electronics area. I glanced at the TVs on the wall and pictured the 4 of us, crushed underneath them.
Stay away from windows and doors,
The voice continued on the loudspeaker.
and do not attempt to exit the store.
Is it safe here? Daniel shook his head. Big open areas aren't good. I'm going to check in back, see if there's a break room or something. You stay here, okay? I nodded. Arms shaking, I sat down on the ground between 2 shelves of video games. Tucker sucked on a bottle in my arms while Jackson began to giggle. Is the tornado going to hit the store? And everything will fly around, real fast? He asked with a big, stupid grin on his face. I don't know. A tornado. A real-life tornado like you see in the movies, plowing through our town. It was so unfathomable. We were New York natives, transplanted here to Indiana only 6 months ago. I'd never been in a tornado watch my entire life. Daniel jogged back into view. Everything's locked up, he said as he joined me on the floor. But listen, Fairview's a big town. The chances that it'll hit this Walmart, I think we'll be okay. I never should have brought us here. You didn't know. None of us did. He wrapped his arm around me. They should have warned us. Like an emergency alert on our phones, or a tornado siren or something. The voice overhead rang out again through the store.
Do not stay out in the open. Do not make yourself visible. That includes security cameras. Please move to a spot that is not visible to any cameras.
I frowned. What does that have to do with tornadoes? A feeling of unease in the pit of my stomach. I glanced up and saw several black globes descending from the ceiling, hiding the cameras within. I guess we should listen to them and get out of sight, I whispered. I grabbed Jackson's hand, Daniel picked up Tucker, and we jogged out into the center aisle. The store was an eerie sight, abandoned shopping carts, askew in the aisle, full of everything from pies to batteries to plants. Footsteps echoed around the store from people unseen as they found their new hiding places. We dodged a shopping cart full of soda, ran through kitchenware, and then stopped in the Easter decoration aisle. There was a camera in the central corridor, but as long as we stayed in the middle of Easter aisle, we'd be invisible. The 4 of us crouched on the floor, next to some demented-looking Easter bunnies, but I didn't have long to rest. A mechanical whine overhead, and then the voice came through the speakers again.
Keep away from aisles with food. If you have food with you, leave it and move to a new hiding place. If you have any open wounds, cover them with clothing.
What the fuck? That had nothing to do with keeping safe in a tornado. We should make a run for it, Danielle whispered to me, starting to stand. But the tornado. I don't think there's a tornado. Listen. Do you hear any wind? I listened, but all I heard was silence. No howling wind, no shaking ground, no projectiles clanging against the metal roof. Maybe it's still coming. I know what they're saying doesn't make sense, but to go outside, we need to get out of here. Now. He grabbed Jackson's hand as he held Tucker in his arms. Come on. Daniel, I don't think that's a good idea, I whispered. But the next words from the intercom changed my mind.
Assume a fetal position and place your hands on your head. Close your eyes and do not open them for any reason.
Let's go. We broke into a sprint and ran down the central aisle. Cameras be damned. The front door appeared in front of us, a little black rectangle looming in the distance. And as we got closer, I saw Daniel was right. There was a tree at the border of the parking lot, under a street lamp. It was perfectly still. We continued running, past the clothing area, past the snacks lined up at the checkout lines. I ran towards the sliding glass doors as fast as my legs would carry me. Almost there. Almost there. Almost. The doors didn't open. No. 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 Daniel slammed his body against the door. It rattled underneath him. I tried to squeeze my fingers into the gap between them to try and pull them apart. They didn't budge. They locked us in, I whispered. I want to go home, Jackson said. Tucker was beginning to fuss too, making little noises like he was about to start full-on wailing. I turned around. and that's when I saw him. A Walmart employee. He was sitting on the ground at the end of one of the checkout aisles, facing away from us, wearing the familiar blue vest with a golden starburst. "Hey, let us out!" He didn't reply. "Did you hear me? I don't care if there's a fucking tornado. Unlock the door and let us out." Again, he said nothing, but in the silence, I could hear something. A wet, smacking sound. I stared at the man, slightly hunched over, still facing away from me. Was he eating something? The speaker overhead crackled to life.
Attention, please do not talk to any Walmart employees.
My blood ran cold. The smacking sound stopped. And then, slowly, the man began to stand. He placed his palms on the conveyor belt and pushed up, and I could see that they were stained with blood. I backed away, but my legs felt like they were moving through a vat of honey. No, no, no. Fingers locked around my arm and yanked. "Come on!" Daniel shouted. I sprinted after him, deeper into the store. Tucker stared at me over his shoulder, and Jackson ran as fast as his little feet would take him. I was vaguely aware of the slap, slap, slap sound behind me, but I didn't dare look back. Daniel ran into the clothing area, and I swayed, dodging circular racks of t-shirts and wooden displays of baby clothes. He skidded to a stop and ducked into the dressing room area. "In here," he whispered, motioning at one of the rooms. We piled inside and locked the door. "Daddy," Jackson started. "You listen to me very carefully," I said, crouching to his level. "You have to be absolutely silent. Do not say a word. Okay?" Jackson looked at me, then Daniel. Then he nodded and sat down on the floor. "I'm going to try to call 911, Daniel whispered, transferring Tucker to me and pulling out his phone. He tapped at the screen, then frowned. "What? We don't seem to have any service. I grabbed Jackson and pulled him away from the door. The four of us huddled in the corner. I held my breath. Under the gap of the dressing room door, men's feet in black shoes. They slowly took a step forward, deeper into the dressing room. "Don't move," I whispered, holding Jackson. The man took another step. "Don't make a sound. Don't move. Don't..." Tucker let out a soft cry. The man stopped. His feet turned, pointing at us. "No. No, no, no." Tucker let out another cry, louder this time. My nails dug into Daniel's hand. No. A hand appeared. It slowly pressed against the floor, stained with blood. And then his knees appeared as he lowered himself down to the gap. No. Could he fit under? The gap wasn't small. It was like the stall door to a bathroom. If he flattened himself against the floor, there's a chance he could fit under. I watched in horror as his stomach came into view. His blue Walmart vest as he lowered his body to the floor. Then he pushed his arm under the gap and blindly swept it across the floor, as if feeling for us. This is it. We're going to die. And then he lowered his head. His face. Oh, God. There was something horribly wrong with his face. He smiled up at us with a smile that was impossibly wide, showing off blood-stained teeth. His skin was so pale it was nearly blue. And his eyes, they were milky white, without pupils or irises. I opened my mouth to scream.
"Attention shoppers.
The voice began overhead. No, no, no.
Please make your way to the front of the store and make your final purchases. We will be closing in 10 minutes.
What? And then, before I could react, something unseen jerked the man out of view. A strange dragging sound followed, as if someone was dragging his body out of the dressing room area. I stared at the door, shaking, as Tucker's cries rang in my ears. But he didn't come back. And within 10 minutes, the usual hubbub of Walmart returned. Voices, footsteps, shopping cart wheels roll along the floor, shaking. I finally got up and unlocked the door. The store looked completely normal. People were lined up at the cash registers, placing their goods on the conveyor belts. Employees were scanning tags and printing receipts. People walked towards the glass doors, and when they did, they slid open. As we slowly walked towards the exit, I spotted the older man who'd warned us about the tornado earlier. What was that? I asked, unable to keep my voice from shaking. He shrugged. "I guess the tornado missed us. What a miracle, huh?" Giving us a smile, he disappeared out the glass doors and into the night. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. We will post every day.